The National Assembly passes the Law on Protection of Consumer Rights, which includes many new regulations to protect people. The National Assembly passes the Law on Protection of Consumer Rights, which includes many new regulations to protect people. In the afternoon of June 20, 2003, with 93.72% of the members of the National Assembly's approval, the National Assembly voted to approve the Law on Protection of Consumers' Interests. Accordingly, many new regulations have been incorporated into this amended law to protect consumers in the context of many current changes. Regarding regulations on protecting the interests of consumers in the field of financial services and banks when there is no separate law on this field. According to the National Assembly Standing Committee, the draft law on protection of consumers' interests has provisions on consumer protection when signing form-based contracts or general trading conditions. Form-based contracts in the banking and insurance industries are often pre-printed contracts with very complex contents and specialized operations. Therefore, in order to protect the interests of consumers in this case, the draft law stipulates that the service provider must clearly and fully explain to the buyer the rights, exclusion clauses, transaction evidence, and regulations to control these types of contracts. In addition, the draft law contains relevant regulations, such as those on protection, collection, use, and assurance of consumer information security, on the responsibilities of business organizations and individuals towards consumers in specific transactions, and on settling disputes between consumers and business organizations and individuals. Regarding dispute settlement in court, this amended law has clearly affirmed that civil cases protecting consumers' interests only need to have a transaction value of less than 100 million Vietnamese dongs to be resolved according to the abbreviated procedure without meeting any other conditions. The court shall settle according to the order and procedures prescribed in the Code of Civil Procedure. Such provisions are intended to show the specific nature of the case regarding the protection of consumers' interests. Accordingly, the majority of consumer cases are of low value and occur frequently and continuously, in line with international experience and trends. Even countries with developed protection of consumers' interests also apply abbreviated procedures for cases of small value. The application of abbreviated procedures for cases of definite value in order to ensure cost savings and social resources to resolve cases of low value contributes to creating trust for consumers and raising legal awareness effectively for organizations and business individuals. With regard to regulations on disclosure of information on the mass media, this law further stipulates the contents of publicity. Only publicize notice of case acceptance by the court, in order to ensure the objectivity and accuracy of the notified information. More clearly stipulate the form of notification. Made at the head office and websites and application software, if any, of social organizations participating in protecting the interests of consumers. At the same time, concretize the responsibilities of social organizations in Clause 3, Article 72 of the draft law on the announcement and publicity of the results of the settlement of the case within 7 working days from the date of completion of the case to ensure the balance of interests and obligations between consumers, organizations, and business individuals. One of the provisions of interest to members of the National Assembly and voters is that in case the beneficiary cannot be identified, the compensation for damages in civil cases on the protection of consumers' interests initiated by social organizations, because of public interests, will be assigned to the lawsuit social organization to be used for joint activities in the interests of consumers. Accordingly, the law stipulates that courts have the competence to decide on compensation for damages and beneficiaries in civil cases on protection of consumers' interests initiated by social organizations involved in protecting consumers' interests in the public interest at the judgment, court decision. Where the beneficiary is not identified, the court cannot rule on the use of compensation. Therefore, in this case, the compensation for damages is used to serve general activities in the interests of consumers according to the government's regulations and is not directly assigned to the social organization to sue because there are many other provisions related to this issue. The assignment of the government to detail regulations is grounded in accordance with the government's competence as prescribed by law. The amended law on protection of consumers' interests consists of 7 chapters and 80 articles, taking effect on July 1, 2024. This content is mainly for the purpose of learning and expanding your English vocabulary. We are learning American English. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Thank you for considering subscribing to see more exciting videos.